Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on the That Old Panda channel. I'm Panda. We're going to be talking about Resident Evil 2, the original. Specifically though, instead of looking at the entire case in detail, we're going to be focusing on one of the more interesting things, and that is winning a part in the movie, or other great prizes. A lot of history in relation to making this game, and that's part of it. In 1996, when the first original Resident Evil was released, development for Resident Evil 2 began and started all the way up until 1998 when it came for this to be released. Could you imagine though? I mean, I'm not going to go over the development, but of course the development itself was scrapped after the Resident Evil 1.5 progress was shown Shinji Mikami, and it restarted all the way where we almost got close to a 1997 May release date for the original Resident Evil 2. Of course, with the development restarting with Shinji Mikami, we got to what it is that we have now. At the same time of development for Resident Evil 2, we also had murmurings and rumors at the time for Resident Evil movie, hence why the win a part in a movie or other great prizes was part of that. And let's dive in and actually see what entails this win on roll. And did we in fact get a winner that walked onto the part and role of the Resident Evil movie that we know of? With the Resident Evil 2 PS1 version of the game, we have a number of variations that eventually do pop up, including import exclusive demos that were coming in early. We have the black label one that actually has the ribbon on it that shows the walk and roll sweepstakes that you can get, as well as the DualShock version, which has the banner at the bottom right with additional features. Of course, we're going to be talking about the black label one specifically, as it shows the win in the part movie or other great prizes that are included, as during that time, especially for 1998, the big hype for Resident Evil is at an all-time high, with not only this new release but also a possible movie. And if you're interested in learning of those details of the movie, watch the George R. Romero documentary, as it's a very interesting piece of history and information that not all of us got to experience, but seeing an insight into it. This, of course, just indicates that you can win the part of the movie, and the big exit strategy, if you couldn't get the part of the movie, was other great prizes. Of course, it continues to mention no purchase necessary, and basically for the expiration, which is April 1st of 1998. And as it indicates that the inside of the manual that comes included has this particular win Resident Evil 2 sweepstakes a part of the movie roll. And then, of course, it indicates other prizes. In this case, though, it does tell you what the specific prizes are, which are going to be a Resident Evil backpack, a library of Capcom games, the official director's chair, and Resident Evil 2 shirt. There's a lot of information here, as it highlights and indicates that this is a once-in-a-lifetime roll, and this will never come again if you don't enter, of course. And this is the information that you would submit and you would send it. And it turns out 4 prizes will be given, which is the first one, which is win a part in the role of the movie, down here in the specifics here. And it might be a little blurry and difficult to see, but we can try and zoom in. As it indicates, the prizes are going to be that part of the movie role, which is equivalent to about $2,000. Library of Capcom games, which I believe is $140. The Resident Evil 2 backpack, $40, which I never heard of really a $40 backpack, at least nowadays. Library of Capcom games is interesting, as it shows a number of games you would actually get. The official director's chair, which I believe is about $30 to $20. And then, of course, the Resident Evil 2 shirt, which is $20 or $10 indicated in equivalent value. Of course, back in the day, we didn't have a whole lot of the internet to actually do distribution, So in order to purchase merchandise, you would have to actually put into your details on a piece of paper or postcard and then mail it in appropriately. Same thing with registration as what this is here with the registration card for Resident Evil 2. And this would ask you survey questions that basically with postage that would be required, but at least it would have the address already entered in. And so all you had to do was include that information. So it's interesting to know that this particular sweepstakes had a 4-winner drive for this particular game that you would actually win for one of those 4 prizes. A number of individuals that have looked into this in the past, but nothing super confirmed that actually indicates who actually won and if they actually got on the new movie. Now remember, I mentioned at the time, this is for the George Morrow version of Resident Evil movie was going to be. Now, obviously that didn't work out the way it intended. As we all know, we got the Paul W.S. Anderson movie that was done. George A. Romero was not included or involved in that particular film. And it does indicate in the specific sweepstakes rules, as you can read, thought that this entire thing was going to be shot in North America. And it turns out that was not the case, as it was shot in Germany. Reading the internet, we have a few sources that indicate what happened. With some folks on the Resident Evil wiki sites indicating they've reached out to Capcom to find out in regards to what the winner was, with a reply that may or may not be. I'm sure it's pretty fine as far as the resource. But that Capcom licensed out the films, obviously Constantine, which did make the Resident Evil that we come to know. And inquiry of the Resident Evil 2 contest, which means since it didn't appear in the US and they weren't able to actually be part of that because it was filmed in Germany, the winner was awarded a prize of equivalent value, which in this case, in the sweepstakes, 2 things would actually give you that equivalent value, and that would be the walk-on roll, which is over $2,000, and the library of Capcom games, which is $140. So $2140 was probably given or provided to the individual. This was a staff member from Philip Navidad in 2002. So in order for them to actually, honor it. Other places on the internet, when it comes to Reddit, it all kind of says the same thing, whether or not you really, really love the Paul W.S. Anderson version. And a lot of folks are just kind of more or less just kind of looking at it. The interesting thing that folks did point out, and I have seen this as well, in the credits, it says the naming contest winner, though, for Resident Evil 2. But this is indicating, at least from most fan theories, is that there were some other sweepstakes and other prizing of things, contest winners, outside of the US into Japan, indicating that you could name one of the monsters as part of the lottery, and in this case I believe was the liquor. At least that's what's indicated here in Reddit. I will include the sources so you can take a look for yourself. So there you have it. The other prizes probably at the time was life-changing and wonderful, even though, getting the life-changing one was probably going to be the walk-on roll with the Resident Evil movie, but we didn't get that. There were some more sweepstakes from the research I was looking at for the other movies that was done. Specifically, there were some folks that were, dressed up and make up as part of the undead that you can actually find, I think, in Retribution if you're into those other movies. But it just depends on what you find, because there's a lot of sweepstakes that kind of went out. But more and more as time goes on with these different variants, and we call them variants just because of the fact that they're different, even though they weren't intended to be. These weren't games and cases that said limited edition or collector's edition. They were just different version and copies of the front label and even the discs that you can see different artwork on. that many collectors, including myself, collect to this day of all the different types of Resident Evil games. And it's pretty crazy that we're all holding on to that older nostalgia, sometimes even more than some of the new collector's editions and the new limited editions of games. So if you've got a copy of this, or any of them, hold on to it. Don't necessarily resell them too quickly. And if it means something more nostalgic and wonderful to you, hold on to that feeling, as you may have difficulty holding on to that feeling again for all these newer things. So, I'm That Old Panda. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you in the next one.